Hi everyone, welcome back to today's video. For today, we're going to be making this really fun, I'm calling it a Valentine's Day card. You could obviously use it for things that are outside of Valentine's Day, but I absolutely love this card. It is definitely it's definitely a little bit time consuming, and it's definitely a labor of love. That's what I was trying to come up with. But I think it is absolutely fantastic. It is so beautiful, and you can take this concept and you can use it for a bunch of different applications. So we'll be talking about that in a second, but really all this is a bunch of die cuts put onto just a plain white card base, and to me it ends up looking a little bit like it's embossed. Which I think is just fantastic. So I love this card, and it's actually really easy to do. It is just a little time consuming. And I forgot, I also want to pull out my ruler. I won't lie, it's a little bit time consuming, but it's not super difficult. So it's one of those things where you can kind of sit and put like something on Netflix or something like that and just kind of craft away. And it's really fun. So to get into what we are going to need, the main focus of this card is our well-written dies. So we're going to be, whoops, I just dropped it on the floor. I'll pick that up in a second. We're going to be using the little one that says love, but there are tons of dies. There are 24 dies in this. So there's birthday, there's a bunch of different words in here. So you can do this, like congratulations, I think is in here somewhere. Birthday is there, sympathy. So you could take this same concept. Thanks, that would be a really fun one to do. Trying to figure out what that word is. Oh, hooray. I was like, I cannot figure out what that says. But you could take the same design and the same concept and do it with other words for other occasions. So that's just something to think about also. But that's the die set that we're going to be using today. And then other than that, really all you need is some paper. So let's talk about paper first, and then we'll talk about tools. So for our card base, this is just our standard size card base, which is cut at 8.5 by 5.5 and scored at 4.25. And then I have my standard size card layer, which is cut at 5.25 by 4 inches. And then for paper, this is just like the teeniest, tiniest little piece of paper from my Heart Specialty Designer Series paper set. So this kind of gives us that accent or our focal point here. You could use any color. You could do it all white. I just really like having that little accent. I think it makes it pop, and it really kind of brings the card together. So that's what we're going to be using for that. And then the only other thing you need is quite a bit of Whisper White. I just pulled this little tiny scrap here because I actually die cut a bunch of words already so that you didn't have to just sit here and watch me die cut a bunch of times. But the one thing that I wanted to say is you want the width of your paper to be about 2 inches. That's about the perfect size for this die. If you're doing this with some of the other words in the set, I would just take it and figure out what the width of that is so that you can do that. And just basically all I did when I did this was I just cut strips just like this, and I just cranked through them over and over and over again. And like I said, the only thing, the main thing to think about and consider is that the width of the paper is just around 2 inches. So it's really not there's no scientific thing behind it. It's not that crazy, other than just making sure that the width of your paper isn't too wide. And I'll talk to you about that in a second, why that's important. But that's all we need for paper. Now, you will need a bigger piece than this. You need about 25 words to fit on the card base. Again, if you're using a different word, you're probably going to need more or less depending on which word you're using. And I recommend cutting a few extra just to have a few extra next to you, because sometimes they do rip a little bit or stretch a little bit. Sometimes they cut weird and they just look a little funny. So I recommend having a few extra just so that you don't have to continuously go back and cut out some more. But anyway, and then on to tools or other things that you'll need. So the only other things that I really recommend having, I'm going to be using my Take Your Pick tool. This works really well, again, with the pointer edge. This is mainly what I use this tool for on a daily basis, to help get the backings off of our words once we cut them out and get that going. So this is really helpful, or any kind of sharp tools, picker tool, to kind of get those backings off. We are going to be using quite a bit of tear and tape. So this is what we're going to be using as our adhesive to stick all of our words down, and I'll talk to you about that when we get to that point. And then I recommend having a ruler. You can see this is the janky ruler I've had for probably like 10 years, if not more. And this is just to kind of help line up when you're starting to space your letters. It helps to have a straight edge to kind of just confirm that everything is lining up symmetrically. So that is it. Let's go ahead and jump into today's project. Okay, so to get started, we're going to prep our paper to cut out all of our little words. And the way that I'm going to do this is by using some tear and tape and my piece of Whisper White. So I had this idea in my head and I was racking my brain of how do I best adhere all of these letters onto my card base without it being too messy and kind of, because I thought about using our fine tip glue pen and I was like, well, that sometimes gets messy because the glue can kind of come out the sides, especially with words that are this delicate. I mean, I thought about using just snail and using my stick mat, my silicone mat, to kind of peel them up, and that just seemed messy also. So what I finally came to was I was thinking a few years ago, we actually carried the Sizzix, they were like adhesive sheets, and what you did was it was a sheet that was sticky on both sides, so you ripped off one side and you stuck it down to your cardstock, and then you churned through and you cut through, and then there was another adhesive layer that you could peel that off and then just stick your cardstock or whatever you cut out down, and without having to worry about the adhesive. We don't carry that anymore. And I wasn't going to go look for it if I'm just being 100% honest at like Michael's or something like that. So I thought, what could I do that kind of simulates that same thing? And I came up with tear and tape. It's the perfect thing to do. So the way that I did this was I'm just going to take my tear and tape and I'm going to take my paper here. And the reason that I was kind of talking about it's important to get your paper to be just a little bit larger than the width of your die is for this step. So we're going to put tear and tape on the back. And if I were to use like this piece here, my die is only so big, so I'm gonna have to kind of judge where I want my tear and tape. And I did that once and I ran into some issues with my paper. My paper wasn't even that thick, it was maybe this thick, and I just didn't gauge well enough where my tear and tape should go, so I wasn't getting a really good adhesion when I went to go stick my words down. So that's why I say it's important to make sure that your paper isn't too wide and that it's just about the thickness or the width of your die. So what I'm going to do is take this piece of paper, flip it over. I'm going to use my tear and tape and I'm going to do 3 pieces. So my first piece I'm going to do right down the center and I just stick it down just like that. And then my next one is going to go right next to it, and then the third one right next to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my words out of this piece now, and when I cut my words out, it's going to have some adhesive right on the back, so I don't have to worry about snail or fine tip glue pen or anything else that you can come up with. The adhesive is right there. It's very, very easy to do. It is a little bit finicky is not the right word I want to use. It's a little bit tedious trying to peel the backings off, but once you kind of get in a groove, it actually goes by pretty quickly. And again, this is the best way that I have found to do this in the cleanest way possible without having to go and get other materials. So if you have some of that like sticky paper, that I think would be ideal because then it's just one big piece and it makes it really, really easy. But if all you have is something like tear and tape or tape like this, I would say that's probably your best option. That's what I found has worked the best for me so far, at least. So now all we're going to do is move some stuff out of the way. I'm going to bring in my big shot here, and all we do is take this. You want your adhesive to be down on your mat. So adhesive side down, so where we just put the tear and tape is under. You just put your die there and then crank it through. And so what I was showing you a second ago, take this off and then move this out of the way. Oh god, that thing is so heavy. So this is what you end up with, this little piece here, and it just pulls out really, really easily, just like that. What I've done when I did this in the past is I just did strips and you just crank them through, and then you end up with however many you can get on one sheet of paper. You can toss that and then go on to the next one. It works really well. I did about 25 of these in probably 5-ish minutes. So it's not that crazy time consuming. It seems like it might be, but it actually doesn't take too long at all. So, like I said, I've gone ahead and I have pre-cut a bunch of letters. I have a bunch of words. I have them right off to the side here. Oh, actually, before I do that, I need to do the same thing with my little red piece here. So I'm going to do the exact same thing. I am going to try to find the end of my tear and tape. This piece is a little bit smaller just because I grabbed a scrap that I had. So I'm not as concerned about placement here because the piece of paper is about the size of my die to begin with, so I should be good to get that coverage that I want. Okay, so now I'm just going to do this way so that it's a little bit easier for me. Put my die here. Oops. And again, I'm just going to crank this through. Really, really easy. And then I have my my little focal point or my accent word for when I start to put my card together. And then sometimes it sticks in the die and you just need to use your little picker tool to get it out. So simple as that. Like I said, to do the card, you need about 20 of them. I would recommend cutting a couple extra just because sometimes, like I was saying, like they look weird when they come out of the die. They have like some spots on them sometimes, or they just don't come out really cleanly. So instead of having to go back and cut more, I would say you're probably better off cutting like 25 probably, just as a safe round number. And then the red one is included in that count. So you probably need about 24 of your white ones and then one red one. And I find that this paper cuts really, really easily and really pretty. So I didn't really have to worry about doing any extra of the red paper. So now we are ready to actually start putting these words onto our card base. So this is the tedious part, and this is where it is a little time consuming. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend like it's just quick and easy, bam, bam, go. You guys know I'm all about quick, easy cards. It's my thing. I love it. This one is just not quick and easy, but I love the end result. So it's totally worth it. So this was my sample, and what I found was you need about 5 rows up and down, and then your rows contain about 4 words. So that's where I got to the 20 count, right? So the way that I did this was I started with this one in the top left corner, and I did my first row, and then I did my first column. And then from there, you know when you do the next one, so it's gonna be, you can line it up and down and left and right. It makes it really, really easy to start placing them. So that's the approach I'm going to take. I'm not going to sit here and have you guys listen to my small talk while I place all of these. I'll place the first one just so you guys can kind of see. But then after that, I'm just going to kind of crank through them and roll through them. I think what I actually might do this time is place this one first because this is going to be the first full word. And what I want to do also, so if you can see down here, my last row down here, it was kind of weird because I didn't have enough room to get a ton of the word in there. So I'm thinking I might actually shift this first row up a bit so that this bottom row shifts up a little bit as well. So we're going to try it. We'll see what happens. A lot of this is just trial and error, seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work. So you're going to grab your picker tool because it's going to be essential to get this done. I promise though it is going to be okay. So you'll see that the little inner bits are still in my words. I wouldn't worry too much about that because what really happens is where the sticky part is on the back is normally where those cutouts are, or that's what I've found. So what happens, it's really easy to peel the sticky backs off. Just like this. See, it takes some concentration. That's what I'm saying. I'm not going to bore you guys with my awkward silence and my trying at small talk while I do this. I will just play some music for y'all while I work away. Oh, excuse me. So I peel the backings off first, and then I poke out the inner bits. And the reason that I do that is because it's just easier when you still have the backing on. Sorry, I have a piece stuck to my finger and it won't come off. When you have the backing on still, it's really hard to poke out the inner bits. So take the backings off first and then poke out your inner bits. Some of them just come out on their own when you die cut them. Some of them you have to poke out. It's not that big of a deal. So then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my word here, and again, I'm going to shift mine up a little bit from what I did last time to hopefully give myself a little bit of extra room. And I think I'm going to go about right here. I think right there is what I want. And then I'm just going to place it down, and that's a little crooked, but that is okay. And then you just push it down. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this top row, and then I'm going to do one column, and then that's going to give me my alignment. So the other thing to note, the reason that I said to use a ruler, so once you do your first row and your first column, you have placement and you know basically where everything is going to go. So what I liked to do when I was doing this before is use my ruler and line it up with the word that I already had, and then that way I can make sure that I'm getting really nice clean rows or columns. And you can do the same thing when you do a row. You can put your ruler there and make sure that it lines up. You're going to have some where they're just off a little bit, like a lot of mine don't line up perfectly. But when you actually look at it as a whole cohesive piece, you don't really notice it. So don't be too worried about making sure it's absolutely perfect. But it is a good idea, and it is a little helpful to use the ruler to get a general placement. So that's just something to keep in mind. So now I am going to turn some music on, speed this up so you guys don't have to just sit here and listen to my little small talk. If I think of any other kind of helpful tips as I'm going through this, I'll stop and let you guys know. But other than that, I'm just going to crank through this. The one thing to keep in mind is when you get down to this corner down here, so I'm going to do this column, this row, probably this row, this row. When you get to this row, don't forget that you're putting in your red piece here. So I did that when I made this one. I started to put a white piece, a white word in here, and I was like, oh wait, no, that's not what I want to do. So just keep that in mind, that that's where your red word is going to go. Again, you can put it wherever you want. That's just where I'm going to place mine. So I'm going to go ahead and speed this up and start cranking away, and I will be back with you guys in just a few minutes. Okay, so that part is over. That was the hard part. Now it is really just putting the rest of this card together, which is super stinking easy. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a plain piece of regular like copy paper, and I'm going to take my piece here and I'm going to stick it into my copy paper and make like a little sandwich, right? Maybe that's more of like a little taco, but you get what I'm trying to say. I'm then going to bring back in my Big Shot. And I'm going to make sure that my image, my like words are on the top, and I'm going to just run this through my Big Shot. And what this does is it just makes sure that everything is nice and flat on my card, and that nothing is kind of sticking up or anything like that. And it kind of just gives it like a nice finished flat look. versus just having all of that stuff on there. And it just makes it it just brings it all together, I think. So you can absolutely leave it as it was. You don't have to do this step. I just think that it helps kind of finish off the card and give it a nice finished look. So crank that through. And the reason I put it in the piece of paper is just to protect it, really. So it doesn't get any kind of guck on it. So I don't know if you kind of saw before, it was a little bit more raised. There was some more texture to it. Now it's honestly relatively flat. I mean, there's still texture, obviously, because we put paper on top of paper, but it's more into the card, into the piece of cardstock. And if you turn it over, you can kind of see a little bit of the imprint of those letters in some places. So it just kind of bonds everything together. Again, it's an optional step, but I think it's something that really helps make this card finished. So now all we are going to do is flip this piece over. I'm just going to use tear and tape because I have it out already. This isn't like a super crazy, strong, heavy piece or anything like that. So you don't necessarily have to use tear and tape. You could absolutely just use snail adhesive. But again, just because I have it out and readily available, I'm going to go ahead and use it. So just get my pieces like so. And dun dun dun, there we go. Rip off the backings. Man, I still have a little bit of this cold thing going on. I feel perfectly fine, but I still feel like sometimes my throat is getting a little froggy or something. So now we're just going to take this and center it down onto our card base. Just like so. I'm going to grab my bone folder, fold this guy in half, give it a nice good crease, and there you have it. So really, really, really fun. Again, this one is a little bit more of a labor of love, but it is absolutely gorgeous, and I love the way that it turned out. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. As always, you can purchase any of these products 24/7 just by going to littlemooncreation.stampinup.net, or you can go to littlemooncreation.com to see more of a description and a close-up photo of this and get a lot more information on not just this project, but all of my projects that I've previously shared. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!